It's been a long time since I've recorded, but I am back. Harvey Laguerre, host of Men Are the Prize, the podcast. I'm here for you. I hope the last 6 months have been great. I hope you've been doing well. I hope you've reached everything that you wanted to do. I hope the journey has been good. And if it hasn't been, it's okay. I hope you've been able to handle the struggle and come back and do the things that you want to do. As I record this first episode of season 3, I was thinking as a Black boy growing up and going into school, I was kind of thinking of how it felt in education. And there was always two things that I felt. One, as a Black boy, I always felt like anytime anything happened, a fight, an issue, anything, I always felt like I was looked at as the impetus, like the problem. Something happened. Oh, look, he's here. It's got to be him. So I was always the problem child from door. And two, they always seemed surprised that I was smart. It was always this weird, like, oh, wow, he answered this question. Oh, he knew that state capital. Oh, he could discuss history. Oh, he knew. Why? Why was that? We Black boys, we grow up and we're already at a deficit when we walk into our schools. We already assume that we're a problem or that we're just not able to be educated. And I want all the Black boys, all the Black men, all the fathers who have Black sons to keep that in mind for today. And the reason I mention this is because my guest is somebody and we'll talk about it. I kind of hounded her. I'm like, oh, I like what she does. She talks about us. I need her on the show. Dr. Patrice Douglas, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for doing this. I think it was Twitter where I saw you first.
Okay.
And I was looking at the stuff that you're putting out. And I'm like, that's good. That's positive. Oh, that's positive. And then you put something up about depression, but it was about Black men and the characteristics, I guess, the things to look out for. And I'm like, she's talking about specifically Black men. And it's not like I'm cheating or I'm a bad father or something. It's about my mental health. I like this. And I kept looking into it. And I'm like, there's somebody I need to talk to. So it is an honor to have you on here.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. And with that said, I love a good bio. So I printed out the bio. Let's get to it. Patrice N Douglas, LMFT, is a doctor of psychology and licensed psychotherapist based in Southern California and licensed in multiple states. She specializes in many subsets of psychology, including anxiety, addiction, relationship health, and multicultural issues. She is the CEO of Empire Counseling and Consultation and The Weight Room. So love that. Located in multiple states, virtually where she specializes in Black men's issues and more. Her worldview and understanding of Black and Brown issues has stationed Patrice as a leading expert, whose words and work is referenced by such publications as Forbes, Cosmopolitan, Vice, Oprah Magazine, Hello Giggles, and many others. She was featured in Cosmopolitan as one of the Black relationship experts to follow on Instagram. That is a legit bio. You have done work, sister. So first of all, congratulations. Okay. Oh, wow. I see you. I love it. The reason I like bios, and obviously this is a podcast for men. The reason I like reading bios is because one of the few things we men get to experience is hearing our accolades. Mm-hmm. So when I talk to men, I read the bio, and my first question is this: what does it feel like to hear all that you've done? We don't get that. People don't just run up on you. Oh my God, look at the way you pack that bag or whatever. What's it like as a man to hear that? So I'll ask you. Clearly, you spent the time educating yourself and doing a lot to help our community. But what's it like to hear why you have all those letters after your name and all that you've accomplished?
Honestly, every time somebody reads my bio, I'm like, who is this person that they're talking about? I'm just a person that just does things. And so I think sometimes I forget like the purpose of why I'm doing it. I just do it because I'm like, all right, you need some insight on a problem. I got you. And it kind of just, leads into accolades. So sometimes when people are reading, and that's like my short bio, right? I try to keep it short. When people read, I'm like, dang, I'm doing all that. And then like, as people are reading it, I'm like, and in the midst of it, I'm like, oh, I'm actually doing more stuff right now too. So I'm like trying to I'm like, okay, do I need to take a vacation? What's happening right now? But honestly, like it's a blessing. And one of the reasons why you had a hard time tracking me down was because I was really busy, but I had to take a step back from a few things because I was actually studying for my psychologist license. So,
Mm,
real quick, a big difference between a master's level clinician versus a doctoral clinician is basically psychologists can do like advanced testing, like IQ testing, autism testing. We do the battery testing as well for like just different things. Versus a master's level clinician, they do more of like the talk therapy. They may be in administration and stuff, but the psychologist realm is kind of like where I can pretty much do. There's not really much I can't do in psychology other than prescribing medications. So I was in the process of studying for that and taking the test, which I passed last week, 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago.
congratulations.
So now my bio will be updated to
Oh my God.
psychologist. And then I think I'm done.
Okay. Just
That's it.
padding the stats. I see you, doctor. Well
Yeah, we
done.
done. We done though. That's it. There
Oh,
ain't nothing more unless
oh.
trying to go back to school, which I think everybody would hunt me down and sit me down and probably wouldn't let me leave the house if I decided to get another degree. So we're done. This is it.
Well, obviously, congratulations on all you've
Thank
accomplished
you.
and so much more that you're going to do.
Thank you.
I always ask, you mentioned that that's a long bio, and that's the one, and we're podcasters, and I do other podcasts, and I give the professional one. Harvey did this, and he was wearing this suit, and he got the pose, what all that good stuff, where you doing it. But if I pulled up on you on the street and I'm like, I got 15 seconds, tell me what I really need to know about you right now, what would you say?
In 15 seconds, I'm just someone that wants to help you see the better parts of yourself. Whether that's talking, whether that's giving you affirmation, whether that's just staring at you. I just want you to know like your existence matters. Like that's pretty much the gist of who I am.
Sounds good. I like that. All right. So this is season 3. So hopefully, my I guess my fan base, people who watch or listen, know what I do. But if you don't and you're new, first of all, welcome. But here's what this podcast is. The word prize is what I work with. I take 4 of the letters from that word, and 4 of them represent characteristics that I think are good for men. The first letter is P. The word is purpose. I have an amazing Black woman on here, so I wouldn't be asking the same questions, but I'm going to switch it up a little bit. Purpose is defined as the reason for which something is done or created, or for which something exists. What is the benefit of a boy or a man who has purpose in his life?
Oh man, it's so many benefits. When I run across men or even boys that experience depression, hopelessness, like they just don't feel like they have value, it breaks me because I don't really know how this world will operate without Black men and boys. Like, you guys are the culture, you guys are the foundation, you guys are the strength. Like, when men talk, the whole room goes silent. Like, we want to hear what you have to say. We want to know what's going on in that brain of yours because obviously men and women, we process things different. So when men talk, the whole room just wants to hear what they have to say and process it and understand more because we just feel like you guys are just such dope creatures, human beings. And so I think the purpose of men and boys, especially in the Black community, is just to exist. Like their presence alone, even if they don't say a word, their breath makes an impact in the room. Their statue makes a presence in the room, whether they smile or they just look. Like all of those things, like it makes an impact in any environment that we're in. And so their purpose is literally just so granular that it's hard to put in words how important they are.
That's good. That's good. I think as a Black man, that at times it doesn't feel like our voice is important. I feel like it's for a lot of Black men, whether it's social media or current events or movies or music or whatever, what we're perceived at versus what you said are really 2 different things. I mean, and I, like I said, I mentioned I have a truckload of kids, 3 daughters of which who love social media. And so TikTok is probably the biggest thing. And hearing what you said about Black men is wonderful. if I didn't hear what you said and I based my self-worth on what was said on social media, I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
I'd be here. The more I see it, I'm Black men, we just robbers, we're just deadbeat dads, we're raping everyone, we just hanging out of the best friend's car, all these things. How do, and this is a little bit off of what you said, but you mentioned it, hearing how negatively we are talked about in society and in the world, what's the best way to deal with that negativity all the time, constantly, everywhere we look? What's your suggestion for a Black boy or Black man? How do we deal with all that negativity coming our way?
Yeah, it's very tough, right? Because unless like you're just at peace with not being connected to social media and things like that, it's really hard to bypass that. A lot of it too, I always have conversations about this with like my friends, colleagues about how social media, like you really got to know human behavior to decipher what is trolling and what's not, right? And so right now we're in a genre in social media where going viral or getting a lot of hits on your post is like where people are at. And so a lot of the stuff that they're saying, they don't even believe it themselves, but they're doing it for content, right? And we see a lot of that on Twitter. Like, I don't know if you do the same thing I do, but sometimes like I just gotta take day breaks. Like sometimes I just gotta, delete the app because it's just like as you just keep scrolling and scrolling, you find yourself like starting to believe the stuff that people are saying. Um, and so what I often tell Black men and boys, it's like, if you don't know yourself, you can't decipher between what society paints of you and what you really are, right? And so if you don't have that understanding of yourself, then social media and these things that people are saying, these stereotypes are going to eat you alive. Unfortunately, due to racism and other things that have made us look a certain way as a community, especially Black men, they're violent, they're aggressive, they're harsh, all these things. Some of the things that we are picked at about our culture, stems from slavery and other things. So we are a community that has to always heal 24/7. There's not a day that goes by that we're not doing some type of healing work just because of the color of our skin and who we are as a people. But for men specifically, I would say, if you feel like the things that people are saying about you is getting to you, first you got to look and ask yourself, am I mirroring any of the stuff that they're talking about? If I'm not, are any of the people around me mirroring the things that I see? And that's why people, the birds together flock. Like, is that one of those things that's going on? But honestly, you really just got to know yourself. Like, you have to know, like, do these stigmas and these stereotypes pertain to me? If they don't pertain to me, but I see, other men around me kind of struggling, how can I use what angers me for good, right? Because a lot of this stuff is really ticking y'all off about like, we're not this, we're not that, that might be one or the other. How are you guys also, increasing the positivity by using your voice? Once again, I go back to Black men's voices are very powerful in the room. So how are you telling people, how Black men really operate and function? I think those are the biggest things on how to manage that. But in all honesty, you got to know what you're putting in your brain. If you're watching a bunch of, things, reels, TikToks that are just literally talking about how men are cheaters, men don't know how to stay faithful, they don't know how to keep a job, they don't know how to take people on dates, but in your life, like you're actually doing those things, then you got to start changing your algorithm to things that benefit you and not just looking at things to see what people are talking about and getting angry about. It's just not helpful.
Agreed. Agreed. It's simple. It's you can just fall in. You can spend hours just sitting there sifting and
They
it's
call it death scrolling, where you
yeah.
don't even realize that you picked up your phone and
Hmm.
you're scrolling, right? It's like the persuasive messaging. I always talk about that, how if you listen to something so often, you're going to start believing it. And so some of the stuff that's happening on social media, you start to fall victim of it. You start to believe that men aren't anything. You start to believe that people look at you a certain way. And even when people compliment you in real life, you're like, I don't know about that because wasn't you just liking a post about whatever, whatever?
Right.
We're we're in a time where entertainment hits so close to home. We don't have the differentiation between the two, and so it's just best to reduce as much of that as possible.
Excellent. Agreed. And I do my best with the kids. I'm like, listen, cut it off, go put the phone down, crack open the book, do something else. But agreed. The next letter in the word prize. It's R, and the word is resilience. Resilience is defined as the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. I talk to men a lot and I ask them this, like, think of something. Tell me something that happened to you that like transformed you, something that happened that changed you. And maybe what it was that happened isn't entirely important, but how you dealt with it. Did you come out of it better? Talk to me about I keep saying benefit, but I think that's the word we use, the benefit of a resilient man, especially a Black man in this world.
It's a hard question to answer because I feel like resiliency is something that we were assigned to that we didn't ask for, right? Like I think we talk about Black women and the strong Black women syndrome, and then we have men feel like the weight of the world is on their backs, and that's kind of why I created the weight room. It's like resiliency is good, but resiliency wasn't supposed to be something that we're supposed to do every single day. Like it was supposed to be like not in case of emergency, but if you got to push forward, you got to push forward.
Right.
And so when I see or we talk about resiliency for Black men, I'm very mindful of how much I bring that up because a lot of them are coming to me because they're tired of being resilient, but they don't have anybody that can take their place or that they can be resilient for them. And so I think every single day that we wake up and we decide to, live for the day and we try to do the best we can, I find that to be a resilient man. I find that a man that can take criticism in a way that's like positive feedback, right? Not like just, throwing their finger down at them, like you should be doing this and you should be doing that, but really looking in the mirror and being like, yeah, I used to do this, but I should be doing this better. So I'm going to make a change. I feel like that's a resilient man. I feel that the men that are out here trying to, dispel or remove generational curses and trauma. Those are resilient men. Like I think men wear the badge of resiliency as strength. Whether it's physical strength, right, like the muscles and all that, or like the hustlers, the ones that can, they make moves and they don't think twice. But I really think about like a resilient man is somebody that wakes up every day and wants to be a better version of themselves. And I think a lot of times men don't get the permission to make mistakes and try again. Once they mess up, that label is stuck with them forever and they don't have a choice but to fight the world. But a lot of times men's anger is depression. Like if you got to fight the world every single day about who you are and who you're not, or don't judge me for something I did a while ago when I've been making all these changes, you're going to be angry all the time because you don't know who's authentically wanting to be supportive of you or who is looking to bash you. And so resiliency, unfortunately, for Black men is why we have so many high deaths of suicide. For Black women, it's more so. Let's not sugarcoat it. Black women are, they're starting to increase the numbers of suicide too. They're now, but a lot of their symptoms are physical symptoms, right? Of diseases and things like that. But for men, resiliency is why they are struggling because you can only be resilient for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And so I find that we often label resiliency as something big that somebody needs to do. But I feel like every single day they take a breath and they decide to live for the day, that's a resilient man.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So you mentioned you have a lot of men that come and being resilient is maybe the thing that they're dealing with and why they need to talk to you. So how do you start a conversation with a man like that who comes in with the weight of the world on his shoulders and not knowing how to deal with it, not wanting to make bad decisions? What do you talk to? What kind of conversation do you have? How do you start that?
Every man is different. I think, especially being a woman, I think, some of them come to me and they're like, are you about to judge me? Are you about to be like my mama, my sister who've been telling me to get my butt in here? They don't really know what to expect. And I think I just come in like, hey, man, you're here to see me. This can only go as good as you want it to go. And so I'm not here to judge, but I'm here to understand. And so A lot of times I am that dot connector as far as when it comes to mental health. Like I could put the name to it, I could put the definition to it, I can put the understanding to it for them to get at ease about like it's not a them issue, it's literally something that's happening. And so, the whole concept of the weight room, which is, my private practice where it's a group practice where I have other Black male therapists that work in multiple states and we do individual therapy and all that, is that when men go in the weight room, especially they're trying to bulk up, like they just go in there and just be touching machines and stuff. You're like, you don't even know what this does. You don't even know how much weight you need. You just know you need to bulk up, right? And so I tell men it's like, I'm gonna help you understand the weights that are healthy for you. Some of this stuff you're gonna want to hold on to, and I'm not gonna tell you to not hold on to it because you might think of this as a survival technique or whatever. Until we can replace it with something different, we're gonna hold on to it. But I am gonna train you so you can hold it right. Because the way that you hold it, you kind of hold it, you're hurting yourself. And then some of these weights, if we just shift them to where you're not carrying it all the time or you know how to put it down, it won't be so heavy. So I'm helping them learn how to balance emotional weight. Because all of it's not bad and all of it you don't want to put away. But if you don't have the diet, right, the lifestyle to maintain the body to hold it, if you're going in there and you have bad form when you're trying to lift the weights because you're just trying to lift up the world, but you don't know how to plant your feet or you don't even know how to like form your hands or whatever to lift the weight, you're hurting yourself. So I'm teaching you all these concepts so that you can either, let the weight go, or you can hold it in a better way. And so in the weight room, I'm called a spotter. I spot you because
Oh,
you're gonna carry it. You're gonna lift by yourself one day, but you don't got to do that right now. So I'm gonna spot this weight for you. I'm gonna show you how to do it, and then one day I'm gonna see if you can do it yourself. And then that's the day where you gonna be all right. And so that's how I kind of help men understand it. It's like I'm not coming in here and stripping you down of everything. We're just going to make it work for you. Some things you're going to have to let go at some point. We'll take our time. And some things we're just going to spruce it up so it just makes sense for you so that all this weight you have, you can decide if you want to hold it or not. But I'm going to leave that up to you, not just tell you you need to let it go.
it's a great analogy. As you're saying it, I'm in because I used to at some point when I didn't have all these children, I used to try to go to the gym and get in shape. And I would always tell people, listen, you could put up 280, but if you're not doing it right, you're gonna hurt yourself. It's about form, it's not about the weight entirely. That's a perfect way to describe it, especially to men. That's you hit me with that. But I love the weight room. I love the idea of it. And at the end, if you want to tell us more about it, I'll definitely come back to it. I skip the I because it's the last thing when I talk to men, but I'm going to come back. Z is the next letter. Zeal is the word. Enthusiastic devotion. This is a big thing when I do this podcast. I've spoken to men, this, like I said, season 3, and a lot of times I talk to men in two questions I asked that really brought about some really strange responses, surprising ones. First of all, what do you do for you? What do you do? Life is a mess. You're struggling, you're trying to date this girl, it didn't work out. You're trying to get this promotion, you didn't get it. You're not making enough money, you're not happy in general. Or you have a family and you're trying to take care of them and you're just getting by and you're struggling. What do you do for you? And the majority of the men I spoke to didn't have an answer. And I pretty much come to the conclusion that we don't think about ourselves as on our list of people to provide for. And it's definitely men, we're here to take care of everybody else. And we're never on that list of people to take care of. And the more I talk to men, I'm like, oh my God, you don't have something for you? Like you don't go ball? Do you meditate? Do you run mini golf, something? And like, no, I never thought about that. So that was one thing. The other thing is if something went down, if you did something stupid, who would you call and tell? Do you have a person that you trust to just, I did something stupid today, and just lay it there and tell them and feel safe to let it go? And most of the time they were like, no. So we don't have something we love, and we don't have somebody to talk to about what we love or what we hate or whatever. We're sitting here. So, and I feel like I may have said too much, but can you give us maybe a more therapeutic answer to how beneficial is it for a man to have something, anything for him, for his mental health?
Man, I think it's so needed. And a lot of the stuff that you mentioned when you're going down that list, I heard you said like the men don't have it. The first thing that comes to mind is that financial trauma that a lot of Black men experience. And so a lot of the stuff that we deem or coin self-care or whatever costs money. And so a lot of times, men being the financial provider, they are going to make sure that everybody has and not them. And a perfect example of that is a topic that often comes up that it always brings me to tears because I'd be so sad. But when men say they don't celebrate their birthday, I'm like, what do you mean you don't celebrate your birthday? Like, it's another year of you being around. Like, we excited. Like, what do you mean? And so, it goes from, maybe their family really celebrated like their sisters more than them, and they never had a birthday party, or, because they're always in charge of paying for stuff. Why am I gonna go out and spend like a lot of money on my dinner? They don't even think that people are going to like pay for their food. Or well, Christmas is coming up, or my wifey's birthday is coming up, she want this Chanel bag or whatever, so I'm just, I'm not like, there's so much financial trauma and responsibility tied to honoring yourself that often men just skip it, right? And then you got some men that feel like, drinking, smoking or whatever is a form of self-care, which we can spend all day debating on if that is or not. It just depends on how you're using it.
Right.
If you're using it too much where you're not able to function, that's not self-care, right? That's coping,
Right.
surviving. But no, it's really important for everybody to have something for themselves. And sometimes it's not even things you got to share with anybody. It's just something that makes you happy. Like I have male clients that, they love to watch nostalgic Saturday morning cartoons. Like anytime they're having a bad day, they'll, put on Recess or Mickey Mouse or whatever and watch that. To they'll look up corny dad jokes. That's something I like to do too. I like to find little jokes that are just like, why is that a joke, but it's funny. To even like certain things like you can just do at home. Like I have this list. It's like 100 low budget self-care tips, and it goes from like putting your comforter in the dryer in the winter so you can have a warm thing to fall asleep to like deep conditioning your beard, to like taking a longer shower, to singing in the mirror, or things like that, where I think that a lot of these things that we call self-care, a lot of things have been deemed feminine, which I don't even know where that came from, where self-care was more of a feminine thing. But in reality, is self-care is your right. Like you have to do something for yourself daily, even if it's feeding yourself, even if it's like going to bed early, if it's like calling somebody and just saying you love them. Like these are things that give you something to look forward to the next day. If you're just chucking away at making money and coming home and have nothing to looking forward to, you're not really living life to your best. So one thing I will tell the men is that self-care is not supposed to replenish burnout. It's supposed to be something that is just part of the luxury of you living. So you get to decide what that looks like. If you don't want to spend a ton of money, there's plenty of things you can do to take care of yourself that doesn't cost a lot, but you have to have something to look forward to appreciate yourself as a human being, and that is self-care. It's taking care of yourself.
Self-care is huge. It's huge
Huge.
because the more I talk to men, and I'm not trained, I just have experienced life. So that I bring experience when I talk to men. And self-care, the idea of you have to be worth it. I think that's when I talk to men. I don't know if you understand, brother. You deserve to rest, to take a day off, to go
Yeah,
do
there's no
something.
qualifier to just breathe. Like you just need to do
Yeah,
it.
exactly. And I think a lot of men, we don't think that. I think I'm supposed to do this. I'm supposed to do that. What do you mean take care of me? No, no, they need this. My wife needs a nicer car. My kids need that gaming system. My friend needs help moving. My job needs me to spend extra time. I mean, what about you, brother? Now what? You did
Yeah,
all
it's like
that for
all of
them?
that's gonna still exist tomorrow.
Mhm.
What about tonight? You still have a couple of hours before you're going to bed. You know, wifey's gonna always want something. Your job is always gonna want something for you. There's nothing that states that you can't take, you know, a few minutes or a few hours to yourself. But like it goes back to, you know, us not being treated as human beings with property, is that we've always had to ask permission to do something.
Mm,
So like even when we have PTO and all that, like how many men do you know have like 200 hours of PTO?
mhm,
Why
mhm.
do you have to? And I'm look, I am not innocent. Okay, but this ain't about me. We ain't gonna talk about me. But why do you have 200 hours of PTO? You get, you know, that 200 is not even, you're not even accumulating anymore because you capped out.
Mhm,
So why do you have 200 hours of PTO? Is because we feel like the world will fall apart. We will get chastised if we take a break. And also, we need permission. A lot of times that's why we wait till we're sick and falling apart to call off, because we literally can't move. And the job is like, oh, don't worry, don't come in, we got you. But for you to just take off to take a nap, that's like a whole big thing. And so a lot of times self care hasn't been a right for us, it's a privilege. And that's because we always need to ask permission to look after ourselves, because if we don't show up to work we can get fired. If we don't show up, people are going to think we're lazy, but in reality is that that's none of their business in the first place.
mhm,
PTO is paid time off for that particular reason, to get paid to take time off. And
mhm,
so I think especially for men being providers, you know, fitting this model of like this macho dude that like he's got $1 million to fan out to everybody and he doesn't get sick, and you know he's just that foundational piece that he needs permission from people to take off. He needs permission to put cucumbers over his eyes to get the puffiness away. He needs permission to take himself on a lunch date or not do a thing. He needs permission to breathe. Like it's really terrible. And I think Black women are really starting to come to terms with like, I'm not asking for nobody's permission to do anything. And I think that women are inspiring men to do the same, like the soft life and all that. But that masculinity piece that holds them back about this isn't masculine for me to do, they need permission from somebody else to do it. And I don't know who that is. We try to figure out who is the big person that you need permission from to take care of yourself. And if
mhm.
you got the answers, you let me know. But it's still TBD. We don't know. But I find that a lot with women is that they need permission to not do something and not be chastised for it, not to be called lazy, not to be looked at as like you don't have nothing going for yourself. Literally, they just want to exist.
Mhm. What I got from that is that we men, I think we feel like we need permission to just kind of either be treated humanely or to treat yourself like a human. Like everything that you said wasn't special. It wasn't like out of box. It's like, I've been working hard for this company. You know what? It's a Wednesday. I don't want to go. And I earned that day to not go, but then to be looked at like, oh, you didn't want to show up, and you're lazy, you got a project. You know, you're supposed to be loyal when loyalty does not exist in terms of jobs and such. And we know that. And it perception is such a big thing. A lot of how we deal with ourselves and the world and the people around us is about how we're going to be seen. So, and especially when you're a man, like you just assume if you do something wrong, it's like it affects everything, how you treat yourself. Now, how we treat women, how whether we want to talk to one, how we're going to walk to a woman or we're not. We don't know how we're perceived when we step into a room, whether we're holding a door or offering a drink or anything. There's so much more to being a man now than in the last 30, 40 years. I've said this to a lot of men. I feel like this whole definition of
Yeah.
masculinity has really shifted.
Yeah.
Yeah, being a man meant one thing in the 80s or 70s and 80s, and being a man now,
It's different.
entirely different. Entirely different. Is that something that comes up in conversations with men that you talk to?
Oh yeah. I mean, I even have some of my clients that I've been seeing for a while. They're like, I still don't know why am I in therapy? I'm like, okay, let's talk about this again. Why are you here? You know, 3 years later. I don't know. Why are we here together? Come on, man. It's okay. You know, I think that's what really trips men up, and you know, adolescent young men too, is that you got all these generations telling you what their definition of a man is. So we're trying to like smush in like what 5 decades of what like definitions of masculinity is, and then you're trying to like, put it in a machine and pop out what that is, like it doesn't really help anything. And I think a lot of times for Black men, their identity and their characteristics and their definition of masculinity was told to them. It wasn't for them to explore or figure out, right? So they were kind of told, like, hey, when they were 5 years old, here, I'm gonna put this ball in your hand and you about to go be the next NFL player. You're about to be, the next whatever, because that's the only way you're gonna get out of, where you're at now is if you become famous or, an athlete. But some of the guys, like if you really got to know them and as they get to know themselves, right, they would have never picked that, but they didn't get a choice, right? And so I think a lot of times men were taught what they were going to be instead of figuring out who they want to be. And
Mm.
so if you got all these definitions of masculinity, well, grandma said this is what a man is, this is what my mama said a man is, this is what my daddy said is a man is, this is what my friends say is a man is, this is what I think a man should be, but nobody seems to be thinking that way. So I'm trying to smush everybody's perception of a man and be that man instead of being who I want to be,
Mm.
which is still masculine, right?
Right.
So yeah, it gets very complicated when it comes to defining masculinity, especially if it's toxic, if it's unhealthy, what's feminine, what'll get me kicked out of the Black community, like what am I supposed to be? And so we have all these areas of where men are really trying to break down the walls of like this feminine versus masculine stuff, really trying to incorporate what is healthy for men, but there's a lot of backlash for it because it's new. And so those men that are trying to really, make the movement of changing what can really save Black men's lives, it's a really hard process. So yeah, I definitely think that them trying to have a model of what all these things comprise of masculinity instead of asking who they want to be or what they define as them being their authentic self, it really really cheapens how they look at life as a whole part of themselves
Mm.
versus what has been told that they were going to be. And so they get older, they get depressed, they're doing all this great stuff, but they don't feel a theme. They're numb because that really wasn't something that they organically wanted. It was something that was told to them, hey, you don't want to be a stereotype or a statistic. So, go to school, get good grades, get a 9 to 5, and then you got to get a wife, and then you got to get 2.5 kids. They got all that, and they're like, so what's next? It's like, you
Mm.
didn't like any of those steps, it's like a checklist. So yeah, they're really trying to figure themselves out. It's hard.
Yeah, definitely. So you talk to these boys and average men, and we have all this that we go through, and whether it's racism from our own community or just being raised within this kind of system that's telling us what it's like to be a man, it's hard enough growing up as just a boy in general. Forget your color, your race, or anything. Being a teen boy is just hard enough. So when you add the fact that he's Black, the only thing that makes it even more difficult, and it's now we're talking about it, what's it like having discussions with these boys when sexuality now is such a big part of our talk?
It's a very hard conversation to have because they're being exposed to different things, they're curious about certain things, but at the end of the day their parents fall into a line of what is acceptable and what's not. And so it's really hard for young boys and even men now to really explore what sexuality means to them. Sexuality to them for a lot of men was just like, I'm supposed to please the woman and that's it. They never thought about like, oh, I'm supposed to be pleasure, get pleasure my own self, or even just like what they like and who they like. A lot of these things they're not able to openly explore it, right? It's not about they got to make a decision right away. It's the fact that they want to try and ask questions without it being an issue of who they are as a person or being judged. I definitely think, especially because we bring up social media, I think now with the whole everything is sassy. I don't know what that's about, but everything we talk about, everything we talk about as far as like if a man doesn't like you or, I guess he's standing up for himself, so he might be, clapping back at somebody that says something. Oh, that's sassy behavior. Oh, he doesn't like you because he doesn't like women. Like now everything's tied to a man's sexuality. And so now they're definitely not going to say anything.
Mhm.
And so I think we're just in that weird era of life right now where, we are questioning men in a way that's not helpful, it's harmful. It's like instead of just figuring out why they don't like certain things or why they're trying something, let's not tie it to like, oh, well, they're changing. That must mean like, they're gay or whatever. It can literally just mean like they're finding themselves and they don't
Mhm.
have to put a label on it, but
Yeah.
everything has a label.
Mhm.
So yeah, sexuality for men right now is very hard. And that's why I commend like some of the publications that are positive, right? When they do like little columns and surveys, and they don't put the man's name, how that man really feels comfortable in expressing like his honest opinion, and that's how a lot of us are learning, or the men that are speaking up without having to, take their identifiers out about what sexuality means to them and how they're dealing with it and how they're embracing it every day. That's giving more men courage and permission to be their authentic self.
Mm. Good conversation. As I was talking earlier, and I mentioned those two questions that I have with men in terms of just dealing with life. What, how does it benefit a man to have other men as friends? What does friendship benefit? How does it benefit us?
Oh man, friendship benefits so much. And I think there was a recent conversation on TikTok about male friendships and how it seems very surface. And
Oh,
how it doesn't seem like it has depth because the way that men were describing their friendships to a woman, it's like you guys aren't talking about anything. Like you're not crying with each other, you're not consoling each other, you're not getting to the depths of things. But the men literally were explaining how it provides benefit. Like it was fine. I guess we as women just wanted a little bit more emotional depth to it. I have no idea, but I will say that it is super important to have a community. That's one of the biggest things that I believe that black men need more of. And it's not that like, men form friendships or connections fairly easier compared to like women, right? Like we might say like, "Oh, you're so cute, we should hang out," but men can literally say like, "I like how paint dries on the wall," and the guy next to him is like, "That is me too," and they will go watch paint dry next week and for the next 10 years, and you're like, "How did that happen? Like, how did you guys go from like saying you liked one thing and now you guys are like besties?" Like the way that men form connections is really important. I think one of the layers that's missing is the trust piece, right? Like, okay, we got this connection, but how can we take this connection into like a brotherhood? A brotherhood that's not just about us saying that we're brothers, but I actually can trust you as a brother. Male friendships, I think, are a really big catalyst to saving men from ending their lives. I think the more that they have that community to talk to, bro, it's okay. I'll come cry with you. Like, you don't got to keep it together. Like, life is tough. Let's go to therapy together. Let's figure it out. Let's go to church together. Those are the things that really save men is that representation of what strength looks like from their peers. Some of the stuff that, I've tried to work with men is doing more group work. um, I always tell this story about my dissertation. My dissertation for my doctorate was on Black men. It was barriers to mental health treatment for Black men. And the original methods of collection was supposed to be focus groups, but none of the men wanted to do anything in a group. Even if it was a group of five. I was like, a group of five guys, come on. They didn't want to do that. So I had to change my methods to individual interviews. Um, and in the individual interviews, the one thing that they said that will help bring more conversation and support to mental health for Black men was to have more groups. And I said, but y'all didn't want to come. Okay, y'all didn't want to come to the group. We could have did that. Like, what are you talking about right now? So I think in theory, men do want to come together, but it's those pieces that we talked about earlier about the shame, not saying the right thing, being too vulnerable, where they feel like men are viewing them as less than, or weird or less masculine, that it stops men from really coming together and connecting in a way that is healthy. And so I always encourage men, like, hey, individual therapy is cool, but have you ever thought about like doing a group therapy session where it's just a bunch of men? Not a bunch, maybe it's like a limited 6 or 7 men that are literally going to do the same thing as you. And so not only are we talking about it and we're giving coping skills, but if you are running into a problem, you got 7 other phone numbers you can call. Like, how dope is that? So yeah, I definitely think men need to have more friendships. And friendships that are not just based off of like we have similar activity goals. Literally, is somebody I can hold a conversation with, and if I do need counsel, or I do need to be consoled, in a way that makes me feel comfortable, I know who to call. And a lot of men don't have that, but they also have never tried to see if any of their current friends could be that space for them. They rather just keep it where it's at. So I think men are often surprised how supportive their friends really can be. And
Agreed.
it's always when something drastic happens, right? Like I've had a friend who he was going through a really hard time. He was super depressed. Um I think this was before I met him. And he said like one day his friends were just like, he wasn't answering the door. We didn't know what was going on. So like they broke his door down. He
Mhm.
was laying on the couch, just laying there depressed, not doing nothing. His house was messed up. Obviously, his, refrigerator wasn't cool. He just was not, he was checked out. So they came in there, they cleaned up his house, and they gave him 2 weeks of groceries. Within 3 days, he was able to sit up and take a shower. He was like, I didn't want to tell my friends what was going on, but they didn't even say anything to me. They just came in, cleaned up, gave me a hug, gave me some food, and said they will call me tomorrow. And that essentially saved me. Like, it support can look in so many ways, but I don't think men allow themselves to see how much their friends really want to be there for them.
I think it's because we think we're in a bubble and that whatever
Yep.
issue we're going through is that nobody
It's
else
my
understands.
issue.
It
I
exactly.
have to figure it out. If I get help, that means I'm not capable enough to figure it out on my own. And I just, once again, human beings, hello. There was one man on the earth, then a woman came. We can get into a debate about what happened. But at the end of the day, God said that you should be on this earth by yourself. And so teamwork is essentially being a strong human being, is knowing what you can do on your own and what you shouldn't have to do on your own. And life should not be dealt with on your own. Like, it's a lot. You should have people to help you get through life. Like, that's not the worst thing in the world at all. If anything, that's what we're supposed to do.
We're not used to getting help. We're used to giving the help. I think that's
Yes.
why it's so hard for us to do it. And as we're recording, we are just in the midst of the holiday season, Thanksgiving and Christmas and all that. And I talk a lot to men about, and you talked about depression. We attempt suicide so much more than women do. And in specifically when the holidays, because there's a lot of men who were married or who aren't, who are used to that Thanksgiving dinner, who are used to going to buy that, the big Christmas tree with the family and doing the Christmas shopping and all of this, and divorce or whatever reason, now they're without a spouse, a partner, kids. And now all he's left with is just him and his thoughts. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just, oh, was I a bad spouse, a bad father, a bad friend, all this stuff. And in the holidays, when we're supposed to be celebrating and then we're more alone than usual, this is when the bad stuff happened. I mean, I'm 49 now, but I'm 18. When I was 18, I attempted suicide myself. I was so depressed. I was so low. I just fell out of college and like there was nobody who understood what I was going through. And everybody around me, it just felt like everybody hated me. And I'm like, I don't really need to be here. Nobody would miss me. And there was nobody to talk to about that. So not my father or anybody else. I'm just struggling. And I got close. I have a scratch on I have a wound here that I look at every once in a while to remind myself, don't do that. But friendship, it's so important. So I tell men, listen, like from Thanksgiving to Christmas and New Year's, call your boys, especially the ones who look happy, especially the ones who are like, yo, I'm good, but whatever. Call them. And it's not just that, yo, you good, calm. It's that long call. Like it takes a minute or two. You got to break a man down a little bit. Like what's going on? Like what's really going on? It's important to be present, whether it's in person or on the phone, to just say something. We are in dire need of each other and we just
Yeah.
don't know it. And it's crazy as a man that 99% of the issues I think we deal with can be solved if somebody listened to us talk for like 5 minutes and I just let it out. I feel like we would be so much better because I'm not by myself.
Yeah. And, thank you for sharing your story because I think it's impactful when people share, especially Black men and Black women, about, they're here today and it wasn't that easy always to get to where they are today. And I know that like the last few years we've talked about, check on your strong friend, but honestly, I've always said like my whole group is strong friends, and I'm the strong friend too. Like we just need to check on everybody at this point. Now we don't even know, like we don't know who the strong friend is because most likely all of us are strong, right?
Mhm.
And especially, how m- Black men specifically hold their trauma and their stress. It's not in the look. Like they, as a community, we often look fine. That's the problem, right? That's why we have medical mistrust, because we can go in there and say my arm hurts. See, it hurts. And the white doctor's like, it don't look like it's that bad. But I'm holding my hand up like this and I'm at a pain of 20. But because I'm looking at you like this, you don't think nothing's wrong with me. So you're going to send me on my way. Even I told you it hurts. It's out of 20. I can't function. I can't even sleep at night. But because I'm looking at you like this, it doesn't mean anything. So a lot of times Black people don't wear their emotion on their face. Black men specifically doesn't, right? And so we do have to ask. And I'm gonna challenge Black men a little bit too. Like if I ask you, are you all right? How was your day today? How are you feeling in your body? I'm gonna ask you not to lie to me. If I'm asking you, and I know we joke like, oh, well, I'm gonna stop asking people how they doing because the minute somebody gonna really tell me, I'm gonna be like, I didn't really mean it. Yeah, that's a joke that we may, play around with. But in all honesty, majority of the people in your life that you know are really asking because they want to know. And so I tell women when it comes to, talking to men about how they feel, give them some breathing room to come to you. Like you may plant the seed, but it may not grow today, but it may grow in 2 days. But in all honesty, I'm gonna also challenge men like you guys are so poker face that I could tell you all day, something ain't right with you, something ain't right with you. You're gonna get pissed off at me. I told you I'm fine. Even though I'm telling you I can see that you're not fine. There's also a part where men do have to let I won't say their guard down, but they gotta just let it out. No, I'm not doing okay today. I don't know if I want to talk about it today, but thank you for asking, and I'll circle back later. I think that will go so much in Black men getting more help if it's not a code that we have to crack. Everybody's not going to work with Black men. Everybody's not going to understand the nuances of what it looks like when you guys aren't doing well. And so if they're asking you, is because they're inviting themselves to helping you. Um, so yeah, men do need to talk more about what's going on with them. Even if you're met with like, oh, well, you're supposed to do that or whatever, whatever. That's one person that told you that. Go try somebody else. I bet you that second person will give you another insight of like, yo, that sounds like a lot, dude. I don't know how you're handling that. Like, you want to sit down and like breathe about it? Like, everybody has their way. You can't get to your breaking point and try one person and decide that that speaks for everybody and then you don't try again. Like I have to tell my brothers that like there's so many people that care about you. So many people. When I go to these conferences and things like that, when they talk about Black men mental health, or even like some of the things that I facilitate, the room be full. Why is the room full if nobody cares about you? We want to understand y'all so bad, so badly. Like we just
Mm,
want to help. But if you
mm.
don't tell us how to help, and even if you don't know how we can help, fine. But if you just tell us, like, I don't know what you can do, but this is what's been going on, I bet you'll feel better and it'll help us support you better.
Wow, that was powerful. I like that. I think we need to hear that more. That there's people out there who genuinely authentically care about our well-being. And we don't hear that enough. And it's something that needs to be reinforced. Brother, I care about you. I care about what happens to you, what happened today, what happened yesterday, what happened in your past, and how it's affecting your future. All of this is something I really love what you said, but let's continue. The last letter in the word prize, the letter is E, and the word is expectation. So I'm going to go off on a little bit here. Black men, we have a hard time asking for help, obviously, getting mental, finding a professional to help us out with. Let's just say I'm a man listening to or watching this episode. I've never gotten professional help. I really haven't looked. What should I expect when I go searching for a therapist or a psychologist or psychiatrist? What should I search for? Who should I search for? What should I be looking for to find somebody who's I feel comfortable with?
Yeah, so the cool part about where we're at in society today is that Black professionals have really trailblazed in finding ways to really connect with the community. And so we have tons of different directories now that are just specifically to us, that we can find providers. Now, sometimes it can get a little tricky because you may not know like what your problem is. Like you might read people's bios and they're like, "Oh, I help, the working professional does this and that." You're like, "That's not my problem." Or, "I help severely depressed people." You're like, "I don't know if that's me." You really just want to find something that relates to what you're going through. It's not always a specialty necessarily, but a lot of these directories have introduction paragraphs. So if it feels like somebody that you're comfortable with, you give them a try. Now, this is the biggest thing that I can tell anybody going to therapy. You may go to therapy and you may find a therapist and you do not match with them at all. That does not mean you stop trying. That means you go and find somebody else. Honestly, I know people use this analogy of like date your therapist, which I think is weird because you're technically not supposed to date your therapist, right? Like, we ain't doing that. But what they're trying to say is that sometimes it's going to take a couple of providers to get the perfect fit. So that's one thing. So going on directories like therapyforblackmen.org, Psychology Today is not Black specific, but you can find Black providers. It's the biggest search engine for psychology, for mental health professionals. You have Therapy for Black Girls, even though it's for Black girls. There's a lot of providers like me that see men on that platform as well. Melanin Mental Health. You have all these different directories that you can go and pick if you want a female therapist, if you want a male therapist, if there's a specific modality that you want to be used, you can search through all of that. I will say that the expectation of therapy is that the first couple of sessions, you may not feel any better. Um, Therapy for the Black community has used as a band-aid or an emergency. Therapy doesn't work like that. Therapy is like a slow build. So you may, go to the therapist a couple of times. You're like, I haven't felt any better. We haven't gotten to the core issue. I don't think this is working for me. We're just getting to know you. It takes a few sessions for us to get to know you, what the concerns are, what are some areas we need to work on, and developing treatment plan goals. So therapy does take a while for it to feel like something. And that's why we tell you don't wait to the last minute. Don't use this as your last hope. Use this as something that I see something is coming up and I need to talk to somebody, or if somebody's encouraging you, let's do that now, then later. Another expectation you should have is that we're not here to convince you that you need to change. You should come in knowing that you need to change. Being that I own a practice that specializes in Black men, a lot of ladies come on behalf of their brothers, their fathers, their uncles, their boyfriends, say like, "Hey, my boyfriend needs therapy, blah 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 blah," but he don't think he needs therapy, or you're going to therapy because somebody told you to go. If you're not going for yourself and you don't think that you have things to change, therapy is not going to be for you. I will say that till I'm blue in the face. Please do not think that we are coming in here to prove to you that you need help in changing something or working on something. You are coming to us because you believe you need that. You just don't know where to go and take those steps. So please don't use therapy as like a changer of like, "Oh, I thought I was perfect, but this person pointed out a bunch of things I need to work on, so I'm sold that I'm gonna do it." Please go in knowing that you already need to work on something. The other thing about it too is that therapy is a little scary because you're gonna have to trust a stranger. So if you don't feel comfortable with something, tell them, "Hey, I didn't like that question, or I don't feel comfortable talking about that. Can we skip that?" 9 times out of 10, they're gonna tell you that's fine. They're gonna say, "Okay, I understand," and they may come back to it later. You could tell them, "I'm still not ready to talk about that yet," and that's completely fine. this is a good platform for you to start using your voice of what works for you and what doesn't. But I would say more than ever now, there are many providers that work with Black men all over. Of course, there should be more, but there's a lot that are waiting for you to sit in the chair. I say it all the time. If a Black man reaches out to me, I'm gonna find somewhere on my calendar to squeeze him in. I could have not a single second in my week for anything, but I will find a spot for a Black man, because for a Black man to reach out and say that he wants help, I need to get him in as soon as possible. And so the help is there. We want to help. We're not judgmental. We want to find something that works for you. And as long as you're down for the ride, we're down for the ride too.
Thank you so much. That was a lot of information. To everybody who's been listening, I'll put all of those in the episode notes for places to find. It's imperative that if you need help and realize you need help, find somebody to help you. One thing with therapy, and I think some people may get the wrong impression. If I get therapy, I know I would probably want a Black man to talk to, because to me, it feels like whoever I'm talking to knows what I'm going through. It's little things like,
Yes.
I'm sorry, you've been in it. Like, you know what I'm going through. Like, I can come, if it's a Black woman, like I came through, I was on my way here, I'm late. I got stopped by the cops, and I don't have to explain to you why I come in stressed, because you already know what experience that brother's going through.
Yes.
While a different therapist who's not Black, maybe that, well, whatever, you got stopped, you got your ticket and whatever. The experience, there's just some things that come that's better when it's somebody who knows. And
Oh, absolutely.
that's so important. And I mean, so that's something to consider. You find somebody who you really feel you relate to, somebody who understands your
Yes.
struggle. So that's incredibly important. Um,
I
thank
also
you.
note that really quick too.
Yeah.
That of course, there, as much as it feels like there's a lot of Black therapists out there, we are growing.
Right.
We still make up, I think we went from 2 to 4% now. We're up to 6% of us make up the whole mental health profession. So there's not a lot of us. So there's one thing that two things I always tell clients is that if you're open to virtual therapy, that just gives you a larger search criteria or range of finding a Black therapist, because we just have to be licensed in the state. We don't have to be just licensed in the city. So if you do virtual, then you have a whole state of providers that you can look for that are Black. The other part about that too is that some of the things that you may need in the moment may not be related to something that maybe culture needs to be included or whatever. So sometimes Black people do go to other communities of color or other communities to get the support, but when it comes to like trauma, things like that, they kind of know like this is where we stop the train, and I gotta go hop onto the next train to get a Black therapist. So if it doesn't luck out that you can find a Black therapist, there's nothing wrong in trying someone that's not, but just know that there may be a part in your journey where you guys are just gonna have to come to an end, and you're gonna have to find somebody that has more relatable experience, or at least a good foundation of racial trauma that is specifically in the Black and African American community. So sometimes people just have two therapists, and some people can find one and work with it. That's the part of just knowing what your experience is going to look like.
So true. Thank you so much for talking with me. This was a wonderful, wonderful conversation. Where can people find you, whether it's your website or social media? This is all you. Promote away. Tell us, well, where can we find you, Doctor?
So pretty much the two platforms that I'm on is Instagram and Twitter. So you can find me on my personal private pages or public pages. Instagram is the Patrice Nicole. Twitter is Patrice N Douglas. If you want to follow the weight room and see what we have going on. We do have groups, virtual groups and things like that that we are revamping and putting back up as of when this airs. At the beginning of the year, we'll have Black Dad Vibes. So we're gonna have a Black Fatherhood group. We have a grief group. We have an adolescent group. We even have an African male group that we are trying to launch, as well as a stress management and self-care group. So you can follow the weight room at BB Weight Room on Instagram and Twitter. If you want to check out our services, we are located in 6 states. We're in California, Texas, New York, New Jersey, Georgia, and Virginia. You can find us at www.thebbweightroom.com.
Thank you for all that. All that information will be in episode notes. So in case you missed that, that was a lot. They'll be all in there for you. Again, thank you for talking. I so appreciate this time to talk to you, to get
Thank
some
you so
information.
much.
Oh, of course. And to end this episode, I end it the same way. So I'm going to talk to the men, no matter what color you are. If you don't know it, and if somebody hasn't said it to you today, you are making somebody's day better today. Somebody's waiting for you to walk into a room to say hi. Somebody's waiting to hear your voice on the phone call. Somebody's waiting to joke with you. Somebody's waiting for you. In case life is kicking your butt and you're not feeling your best, just understand that somebody loves you and somebody needs you. So don't ever make a bad decision. Don't ever leave us because we need you here all the time. Somebody's waiting for your presence. Never forget that you are an amazing man and you are the prize. Thanks for listening.